Let's move to the next segment here. These are guys that are true running back ones. They're players that can compete with these other guys at the top of the position. Maybe not the big three, but they can be running back ones. So you've got it. And by the way, these guys are 8th overall to 43rd overall in Yahoo ADP. It's a big group of guys here, Boone. So Ashton Jeanty, Devon Achane, Derrick Henry, who is the 8th overall player, so maybe you're a little bit lower than consensus on Henry. Chase Brown, Bucky Irving, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Kyron Williams, Amarian Hampton, Kenneth Walker III, and James Cook. Where do you have like a tier break in between these guys? Because I do. So I'm curious where you see like where do things drop off from like true RB1s to maybe like a little sketchier in this individual tier?
Yeah, I think I would determine this first group as just like solid RB1s. I might not be super excited about all of them, but I think they're all going to be fine as the RB1 in your team. I think the break for me there happens after Kyron Williams, and you start to look, and it doesn't mean that I don't love Hampton or Walker or Cook. I absolutely do. I mean, I got the Bills mug next to me here. I couldn't be happier that Cook has this new contract and that we don't have to worry about that situation for the rest of the season now in Buffalo. But I do think those other guys have totally proven themselves. I think the reason that the three guys I mentioned are just a little bit behind is there's question marks around them, right? And Hampton, we haven't seen it done yet. We have the Slater injury, the offensive line. Najee Harris is back practicing. I'm not that worried about Najee, but you can at least paint a picture of why, Hampton isn't quite there on that level of guys you completely trust yet. Walker, it's just the injury thing. And we've talked about that a bunch of times, that when he's out there last year, RB12 in fantasy points per game, the problem is he just keeps getting these nagging injuries. And this summer, he's also been missing some practice. They say it's a plan. I believe them right now that they're just managing his reps, and why max out a guy that has injury issues and durability concerns during the season. Let's get him as much rest as we can. He gets out there, then he takes a break during the season. Let's hope he can stay healthy for the full year, because he's certainly a player that has top 5 talent. And then Cook, the question with him, we saw him do it last year, but the touchdowns, 16 touchdowns is a lot to replicate for a guy that isn't the biggest back, isn't an obvious touchdown scorer necessarily, who's in an offense with Josh Allen, who we know could put up huge touchdown totals at any moment, with Ray Davis, who's that kind of back that could step in and maybe become that goal line guy there. And some of the young pass catchers there, if they come on, if Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid boost their touchdown totals up a little bit, does that come away from Cook? So I think that's a little bit of a concern. And some of the guys that hold out or hold in, I worry too that we see them get injured a little bit, right? I don't know. That's totally just speculative on my part, but we've seen guys come back from these hold-ins and end up with, a hamstring issue, some sort of soft tissue thing. I'm going to be paying attention to that with Cook. But that's why those guys are just a step behind that other group, which I think the guys in that top group are very, very solid. I mean, we could run through them if you want, but I think all those guys have a reason to be very stable RB1s in your lineup.
I agree with you that Hampton's the pivot point player. I have still that's actually where my tier breaks too, but I've still kept Hampton in the tier with Kyron Williams, with Josh Jacobs and those guys there. And I'm not super comfortable with it, because I don't want to be the guy that keeps saying, hey, you all do not pay enough attention to offensive linemen. You do not discount players enough when offensive linemen get injured, and then be like, well, yeah, but Amarian Hampton's still tier 2 running back. He's taking his 3rd round, whatever. I do think there's more concern in his profile now after the Rashawn Slater injury than there was previously. So I'm kind of waffling on him as either the first member of tier 4 or the last member of tier 3. Because I also think there's a little bit of a break from, for me, McCaffrey, Henry, Achane, Jeanty to the guys like Jacobs, Irving, Jonathan Taylor. So let me ask you this. Of the guys that you have in your top 20 overall players among that we're talking about here right now, which at running back is Ashton Jeanty, Devon Achane, Derrick Henry, Chase Brown, and then Bucky Irving, which one of those worries you the most? If you're taking them a top 20 overall, which one do you have the most hesitation clicking? And maybe which one are you then on the flip side most confident in?
I feel like Henry has been that guy, but he's been that guy for me for 3 seasons, because he's just defying every possible age cliff, right? And you keep going into these seasons going, he's a bigger back, and we've seen bigger backs kind of break down really quickly and fall off that cliff really fast. And yet Henry just keeps going and he keeps pushing through. And the reason I'm not like totally worried and scared of him is because we know he could put up a huge touchdown total in that offense. I mean, 2 years ago, Gus Edwards, and we saw Gus Edwards last year, didn't even look like he should have been in the league. And yet the year before, Gus Edwards had 13 rushing touchdowns in the Ravens offense. So even if Henry takes a step back, even if Keaton Mitchell comes on, and a couple of years ago, we saw Keaton Mitchell carving out a role in that offense. By all accounts, he is back. He has that game-breaking speed again. If he starts to eat in a little bit to Henry's workload, if Henry starts to decline a little bit, he can still come out. Henry could put up 10, 12, 15 touchdowns and be just fine for fantasy, just not be the top 5 back that we've seen Henry be in the past. So he's a guy that I'm worried about, but the concern, I guess, isn't that big. Achane comes with a little bit of concern too, just because I think that the Dolphins, this whole offense, I'm worried that someone's just going to pop the balloon this year and all the air is going to come out of it. And there's going to be a big, big, big problem for the fantasy assets in that offense. I could see everything get derailed, and I would worry that what that would mean for Achane. And then, of course, Tua's injury history is a big, big problem for him, right? And you can look at the splits last year. It was just crazy. When Tua was out there, he averaged 22.4 fantasy points per game in PPR. When Tua was out of the lineup, Achane was barely startable at that point. 8.6 fantasy points per game without Tua. And the big difference was the receiving work. When Tua was out there, he averaged 6 receptions per game, 46 receiving yards. When Tua wasn't out there, 2 catches for 10 yards on average. Just crazy, crazy splits for him. And those are 2 situations that either Tua could get hurt or just in general, the Tyreek Hill distraction, the offensive line problems, things could go south very quickly for Miami. And then you worry what that would mean for Achane.
Man, the Achane stuff is so tough for me because, all right, like I on the one hand still have him ranked as my 12th overall player. But like how great do I feel about it? The Dolphins, like training camp reports have not been good. The offense, Tua played in the preseason because he was so bad in the joint practice. Was it with the Patriots or whatever the other week, like whatever, whoever they just played the preseason, I can't remember. It was so bad that he's like, they had to get him out there to get reps against the Bears, excuse me. Yeah, so the Bears defense took him to task. Tua plays in the preseason. Now there's bad reports this week that, again, from the tweet we're showing right now, at @A_Peyton. Either the Lions or the Dolphins are really bad or the Lions are just a juggernaut. Not a great day for Miami. So training camp reports been bad. There's the Tyreek Hill weirdness of it all. Jalen Wright gets put in at the goal line to maybe like subtweet, Tyreek Hill, who said, well, I'd like to see Jalen Wright over Devon Achane, which is just weird. Because of the receiving usage for Devon Achane, I hear people say like, oh, he lined up in the slot on 19% of his snaps. Most of them running backs. He had a minus 1.39 air yards per target. It's not like he was actually running slot routes. He just got a lot of like screens, 25 catches, but a bunch of screens. So are the Dolphins really just going to be a good offense if they're screening people to death with Devon Achane? He could be a fantasy like point scam, Boone, but it wouldn't necessarily be great for the Dolphins offense.
Yeah, I think it's super concerning. And don't get me wrong, I've taken plenty of shares of him this year because of the ceiling that he still does offer if things do stay on the rails this season. But if you look at that group that you mentioned, like I feel the need to constantly point everybody to Chase Brown again. And if you could still get him in the early 3rd round, great. I see him go now in the late 2nd. He's really moving up in ADP quickly here. And it's for good reason, because I think this year he could be a guy that's comparable to what we've seen from Achane before, right? You look at what he did last season. Once Zach Moss went down, Chase Brown went off. RB7 overall in fantasy points per game over the final 15 weeks. And then you come out this year and everybody is talking about him around the team. I mean, their offensive coordinator, Dan Pitcher, he told Jory Epstein that, by the end of the season, we are going to see Chase Brown be a household name. I believe it. I think that is totally true. I don't think anybody there is going to take significant work away from him as long as he stays healthy in this offense that I think is going to be very, very potent this season. Chase Brown has been, I think, one of the best picks at that 2-3 turn. I'm still willing to take him as he continues to rise here because I think he's probably just as valuable as any running back going in the second round.